To say I love Bug Fables is an understatement. I adore this game, to no end. I already managed to accomplish the Leif only challenge where I only use one bug throughout every battle, and of course that is Leif. But I gotta wonder, what if we tried using only Chompy for every battle? Yeah, that seems like the next step up right there. But who is Chompy, you may ask? Well, it's this cute little girl right here, our little baby mother Chomper. Now, do not be misled, this challenge will not only use this one Chomper and nothing else. We do need to give her some help, and that's where Leif, V, and Kabbu come in. These three won't be doing any fighting, but they will at least help little princess right here do what she has to do to win all these fights. So I bring to you all, can you beat Bug Fables the Everlasting Sapling using only Chompy for every battle? Here are some ground rules. We can only use Chompy when she is first available, which is basically immediately after Chapter 3. So no Spooter, no Venus Guardian, and no B33. As for the main bugs of Team Snakemouth, they cannot use any offensive skills at all. Skills like Leif's Break or Kabbu's Taunt are allowed to be used, as well as V's Secret Stash, but under no circumstances are they allowed to attack directly. Indirect damage is probably going to be okay, but that still is not going to work against enemies that are airborne. So there are bound to be plenty of enemies and bosses that can be extremely problematic. But enough keeping you waiting. It's time for the challenge to begin. This is Phantomay, and I am here to say to you all, ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime! Now in hindsight, it may be a good thing that Chompy was not available before Chapter 4 begins. By Chapter 1, you don't have access to the pink ribbon yet, so she can't deal damage to Anichas, which have 2 defense, and her attack set is only 2. She also lacks any means of hitting airborne foes, so the Venus Guardian, after it reaches about half HP, is completely immune to damage from her. And that's especially true for B33 because it's always airborne, so it will be absolutely impossible for a Chompy to rescue us from the honey factory too. With those out of the way, let's begin the run proper. Because we're already at the hive, let's get the pink ribbon because that increases Chompy's attack power by a single point of damage, which makes a huge difference between this challenge being possible and impossible at some points, because there are some enemies with as much as 3 defense points. It should also go without saying that meadows that can take advantage of doing nothing will also be very valuable. So meadows like Garumi's Reflection, as well as the hardware rewards from artists, will be extremely valuable for survival. And of course, if Team Snakemouth is not going to do any fighting, they may want to use some items to heal each other if they need to. V can't do all the work, and we're not going to rely on Reverse Toxin unless we get poisoned ourselves by the actual enemy or boss. With all that said, let's get into the first boss of this challenge. And by first boss, I mean the first mini-boss, because it's not the Watcher, it's Astotheles. Truth of the matter is that this boss fight is not difficult, because Chompy, while she doesn't do very much damage, especially if Astotheles tries using his parry stance, which actually reduces the damage you do by 2, Leif still has this magic attack to reduce defense by 1 if you use Break. And thanks to Kabbu being equipped with both Taunt as well as Reflection and Meditation to increase both our TP and our defense after every turn, he has a very easy time just taking damage for everyone else, since Astotheles only has attacks that hit a single target at a time. The extra TP also helps stretch as much as possible, and if Kabbu really needs more HP, we also have V on healing duty with her Secret Stash. Lastly, mastering guards is going to be super important because we really don't want this fight to last too long because, well, that'd be really freaking boring both for me and my viewers when this was being streamed on Twitch. So to speed things up, Kabbu also has Spiky Bot equipped, which is going to be extremely handy because it forces recoil against bosses that attack Kabbu directly, even with swords. Unfortunately, we don't have Super Block Plus medals yet because Chompy has not been able to beat either Monsieur Scarlet or help the Golden Sentiment Technician, so currently both of those medals are off the table. But Astotheles, well, yeah, he wasn't very difficult, but it was technically the first boss that Chompy had to go through. It only does get harder from here. After Astotheles, however, immediately afterwards we had to battle the Dune Scorpion of the desert. This thing hits really hard. Both of his pinch moves are able to do a lot of damage, especially the double pincer if my guards are bad. But the area of effect attack where he picks up a boulder and then throws it at Team Snakemouth is probably the worst because that hits both V and Leif, and they don't have any protection whatsoever. With 2 super blocks however, they can survive 2 hits from that boulder, but if I don't get a super block even one time, then 2 boulder tosses are all it will take to knock them both out. V once again is focused on healing with her Secret Stash, and she does a really good job at keeping Kabbu alive. Unfortunately, all Leif could really do was just make it so that the fight would take a little bit less time by using his break skill on the Dune Scorpion so that Chompy did a little bit more damage every turn. We don't get Enfeeble until after the Watcher, so the damage being dealt was just gonna really be really high the entire way through, and we couldn't do much to negate that. I also didn't have very many items to really work with because I just was too lazy to go get more. So the fight ended up being a lot closer than it had any real right to be. And it was a combination of taunt, meditation, reflection, and especially back support made it so that he was able to keep the entire squad going sturdy. Yeah, this fight was more of a pain in the back than I would have liked it to be, but at the same time, it was our first attempt we managed to win it, so I'm not really gonna hurt too much over that. Now I know what you're thinking. It's time to bring out the Watcher, right? Wrong! We first have to battle 3 Wardens that have the key that's guarding the Watcher's room. And the Wardens are all airborne, so we can't attack them directly with Chompy. And if we don't beat them, we can't continue with the game. So what is one person supposed to do to get past them? Simple. Use Kabbu, taunt, have Spiky Bot equipped, and just hope and pray that they attack Kabbu directly and then eventually explode. You get no exploration points for it, but at least you can continue with the challenge. And now for the Watcher. This fight is a little bit complicated, but it's also really repetitive and very freaking long. Most of the beginning is just Kabbu using his do nothing command and then taunting. Maybe if the Watcher increases his defense we need to use Leif to break, or if Kabbu takes too much damage you can have V heal him, but it's otherwise a pretty simple fight. Kabbu is the only one with extra defense thanks to back support, and also has a lot more HP than either V or Leif. The idea was to have Kabbu in the back, taunt, and redirect the projectile attacks that the Watcher would shoot out when in its sand form, as well as Fishing Coffin in the ice form of the Watcher too. This goes on for quite a while, and because Chompy is only doing 3 damage at a time, and sometimes the Watcher can hide under the ground by trying to steal HP with his Cyclone attack too, do not be surprised if this fight just ends up taking a long freaking time because we just can't do anything to it. There unfortunately just is not much we can do if the Watcher chooses to burrow under the ground and steal HP, because we can't use taunt to redirect the move, and we can't guarantee that it attacks Kabbu if we try paralyzing him too with like shot candies. Worse yet, sometimes the Watcher will summon either a wall which is made of ice or sand that will be forced to be taken out by Chompy before we can do any more damage to it. She can break through in a single turn with her bite, but that's still one whole turn where we're not doing damage, and that just means the fight can last forever if the Watcher, for whatever reason, just wanted to keep summoning wall after wall after wall. The Watcher can both summon a wall and attack. It can even do that twice if it wanted to, if the boss was actually fast because it had times 2 turns. That physically could not happen, but you get the idea. In response to the Watcher making itself fast though, I ended up changing my strategy a bit, and instead had Kabbu in the back to taunt, but I also had Leif using his bubble shield to protect him, as well as having V use her secret stash if ever necessary. Thanks to the immunity afforded by Shock Trooper, it was actually super effective, and it kept us alive for a lot longer, while also not having to worry nearly as much about guarding probably if I didn't feel up to it. Lastly, the Watcher can heal itself a single time for 6 HP, so that makes the fight last a little bit longer than otherwise, but I don't really care. I'm just happy that they made the HP stat 69 and not 75. In any case, that's the Watcher down and out, which was a fight that was really freaking long, if not really that difficult. But no matter, we were able to do it, and that's all that matters. Anyway, onwards, we have to worry about... Chapter 5, with the Wild Swamplands and the Far Grasslands. So this here is interesting. Maki will join us as long as we are in the Far Grasslands and about halfway through to the Wild Swamplands as well. Now, Maki is an interesting case. He is a character that you have no control over whatsoever. And unlike our fair princess here, he can target enemies that are in the air. Now, the rules say that anyone of Team Snakemouth cannot really do anything as far as attacking, because of course, if we were to use V, Kabbu, or Leif to attack, that would override the challenge in its entirety. But Maki, I really have nothing I can do about him at all. He refuses to act in accordance with my wishes, so I only can really just hope that whatever he does not really make things worse for me. Which it wouldn't, because the fact that he can hit airborne enemies is actually a huge boon. And yeah, I could just ignore every enemy in the Far Grasslands, but when we also encounter the tribe of leaf bugs in the Wild Swamplands, what are we gonna do? That's a required fight where Maki's gonna intervene. So I'm sorry, but this is just one of those times where we have to hold the L and let Maki help us. And keep watching the video, because there is another point where we really have no choice but to have Maki help us. And in that point, it's actually going to be pretty much mandatory that he's even there, so I really can't complain. That being said, we won't always have Maki's help, and there will be enemies in the future that will be airborne, and we have to be able to answer them as well with our only attacker being Princess. So what are we going to do? Not only that, but with the pink bow, Princess only has an attack power of 3, so she isn't exactly going to hit very hard. Well, in that case, that's where she's going to get some help. You see, Team Snakemouth cannot attack directly because that would void the rules of the challenge. However, indirect damage is perfectly legitimate. Moreover, even though Chompy cannot equip any medals, that doesn't mean that I can't equip medals to Team Snakemouth, so if medals would help them survive for longer, or at least giving them more options to have Chompy deal damage, I consider that to be fair game as well. That being said, before going to the wild swamplands and the far grasslands, I actually went to take on the bounty with Monsieur Scarlet, and had Chompy take care of him first. Now, you think that this would be a really hard fight to do, considering that you do so little damage to Monsieur Scarlet, and because of having 3 bugs that are also going to be healed off of because of Scarlet's HP drainage, yeah, this fight will be impossible if not just ridiculously long-lasting. But that's not the case, and here's a little thing that I like to employ, calling sacrificing the bugs that are not needed so that your other bug that actually can be surviving in this fight can actually do what he has to do. I purposefully entered this fight with both V and Leif at low HP, and gave Kabbu the metal Tardigrade Shield. This metal increases his defense stat by 3, while also making him immune to status, which the immunity to status won't really help that much, but boosting his defense by 3 whole points ridiculously well reduces how much damage that you can both get hit by, as well as how much HP is healed by Monsieur Scarlet's attacks. Even when his attack stat goes up, he cannot do nearly enough damage to match Kabbu's defense, especially when you integrate metal to take advantage of Shock Trooper, a metal that makes you impervious to damage as long as you're paralyzed. With all of these combined, Monsieur Scarlet was actually a very easy boss to take care of, and that's the idea I want to have around this challenge being. Not that it's a masochistic challenge that only the criminally insane would do, I mean it is, but that's just because I'm the person that's doing it, and I am in fact insane. But also, I want to show just how far a good strategy can carry you, because I genuinely feel like this challenge has a lot of potential that's just waiting to be cracked open. Of course, this also opens up Shay's shop, and there's a very special medal to open your attention to, and that's EXP Booster. Now for Team Snakemouth, this decreases their attack power by 1. However, Chompy is not affected by this medal, so it purely allows you to level up faster, which is a very strong reason on its own for me to say, get this hecking medal, you will want it. If you're like me and you hate grinding in RPGs, you will be kicking yourself if you don't get this medal. It will just make your life that much easier. Now, on that same note of making our lives easier, there is a certain boss that I want to take care of while we can, and that is Broodmother. Now, I know what you're thinking, and you are right, to an extent. Broodmother is airborne. She may occasionally fall to the ground to do her electric shock attack, but if she summons a single midge, what are we going to do to deal with it if it is always going to be airborne? Moreover, you cannot KO a midge with passive damage, or any enemy for that matter, so Spiky Bod, or say Poison, is not going to cut it. Well, fair viewer, before I actually tell you what this actually is, thank you for watching this video up to this point. I love you for this, and my goodness, I have to express to you just how amazing it is how statuses are so valuable in this game. Like being poisoned, being paralyzed, and in this case, being frozen. This is where the medal Frostbite comes in. This medal offers a chance of enemies attacking a frozen target directly to be frozen, while also redirecting all damage taken back at them when they make contact with you. When these midgets get frozen, they fall down to the ground, and when they fall down to the ground, Chompy can reach them, and they're dead. Couple this with Kabbu redirecting all the attacks from Broodmother as well as the midges, and taking advantage of his increased defense stat thanks to having Super Block Plus equipped, this is a very doable fight. That is also, just to say, not a very hard one. And the best part is that it nets us one of the best medals in the game for this type of challenge, the coveted Miracle Matter. A medal that automatically revives bugs after they've been knocked out for 2 turns. Enough said, it's a great medal and we're gonna love having it. But wait! There's more! This medal also enables us to be able to take care of the Golden Sentiment Technician trouble. In Wave 2, there are 2 midges, but thanks to Frostbite and some good old honey ice cream, we can freeze them solid, let them plunge to the ground, and dispatch them like they're nothing. It's also a really good thing that we have Kabbu's taunt for this, because thanks to Kabbu being able to taunt enemies and force them to attack him, we don't have to worry about like VU or Leif just chancing them getting hit. It's an extremely valuable technique here that allows us to get so much farther than we otherwise would be able to. And the cherry on top of the beautiful, beautiful ice cream sundae, it's that thanks to Spiky Bod and Super Block Plus, if you Super Block a move with Kabbu, you can deal as much as 3 damage indirectly just by guarding, which for bosses and enemies with multiple hits that attack directly, this will speed stuff up significantly. It's a very, very welcome boon to help with Chompy's limited damage. In any case, this is how the beast effectively went. This fight was not really very hard as much as it was that I was playing really freaking sloppy. The idea behind this fight was to have Kabbu in the back and just keep using taunt with Spiky Bod and Super Block Plus equipped. Have Chompy do her thing, and then you just kind of have Leif and V on standby. Though I should have had Break equipped because the beast has a point of defense, and that does get in the way of how much damage that Chompy can do to it. It didn't change that much, but it would have sped things up a little bit more, because otherwise Leif was not doing anything anyways. Otherwise though, meditation as well as using our reflection metal and doing nothing helped Kabbu survive a lot longer, which is very nice. And thanks to the TP core metal we got from Mother Chomper, that allows our TP to really stretch. And if we need to heal with V using her secret stash, there really is nothing getting in the way of that. Because me, I don't like to activate poison on my own and using metals like Eternal Venom and let's say Poison Defender. At that point, I think it's just really freaking cheap. I mean, if the AI poisons me, then that's fair game. But if I can do it myself, I don't think that's very fair. By the way, did you know that it's actually possible to be able to beat the beast without using Kabbu at all? Well, you can owe that to Frostbite. Turns out, it blocks all damage, not just half like I thought. That's only for indirect attacks like it was shown earlier in this fight. But direct attacks like its last resort attack where it does 99 damage to you, it's entirely blocked, and you end up reflecting a whopping 100 damage back at the beast. And the cherry on top is that you can also freeze it solid too. Which in turn means that my Leif only challenge to Bug Fables the Everlasting Sapling is actually possible to beat 100% without using Kabbu at all. Which is surprising. I did not think that Frostbite would have been the key, but I really wish I had known about this earlier. Shoutouts to Emil in the comments, by the way. If you're seeing this, thank you for telling me about Frostbite. I never would have thought to try this myself, and it's really cool that this metal actually has a purpose. And if you're not Emil and you haven't seen my Leaf only challenge to Bug Fables, check it out after this video is over. I would beg you to do that, please, for the algorithm. You don't have to subscribe, by the way, but at least leave a like under this video to show that you enjoyed the video, and it helps like sending good signals to YouTube. I would really appreciate it. Not only because it motivates me to make more videos like this, but because I also want to get the word out about my partner-only series to Paper Mario 2000 Your Door. Because, honey, it ain't only Bug Fables on this channel. I've got oodles of Paper Mario content to offer you all too. And I'll leave you to make your decision from there. That being said, General ULTIMAX freaking sucked the fight. Yeah, ordinarily, General ULTIMAX and his cronies of Wasps would be a freaking joke. But when you can only do 3 damage per turn, unless an enemy has really high defense and you have to use Leaves to break the lower their defenses to make them easier to take out, that can make it tedious, but then you introduce a character that can heal them at will, and it turns a fight that is normally just really tedious to a fight that you basically just have to pray that you don't get completely walled out forever. Because I'm thoroughly convinced that General ULTIMAX has an infinite supply of crunchy leaves that he can just use to heal his Wasp whenever he wants to. There really is no way around this. The only way you're gonna be able to win this is if you just keep attacking and you keep your defenses low and you just try to hold out for as long as you freaking can. And ultimately, just pray that ULTIMAX slips up and just lets you knock out his troops, both his Wasp Bomber as well as his Wasp Driller. When that happens, the battle is basically over because then General ULTIMAX will try fighting you, and all you can do is just like slap Kabbu and, well, take a bunch of damage in return because, well, Spiky Bod, but before that, the fight's gonna be kind of a pain to do. Once again, leading us to... No. Get away! Chapter 6. Let's talk about this chapter and its bosses. Starting off with the Primal Weevil. This boss is not hard. About the worst thing that can happen is that you get numbed by its Roar of Time, but aside from that, that doesn't numb Chompy so you can keep attacking him, especially if you lower its defense stat, so it only has 0 defense at that point, and you're doing all the damage you can do to it. Just block well, and if you can't do that, bring tons of Leaf Omelets, because you really want to be able to last as long as you possibly can. So time to think of it, quick question I want to ask you all, but do you think the idea that we can use items just invalidates how V has her secret stash? Because she doesn't need to use TP to heal, we can kind of just use our items for that instead. And healing poison isn't really going to add that much more. Why not tell me what you think later in the comments down below? I would really appreciate your input. And with that comes the Tournament Coliseum. First off, we have some members of the Forsaken Lands, being a Plumpling as well as a Mimic Spider. As you can tell, the Plumpling has 3 defense. Chompy has only 3 attack. So there's only one way we can continue going forward, or well, 2, but I prefer using Break because I don't want to use a whole item slot. And that makes this impassable obstacle passable. On the flip side, there's also Cross and Poi. They don't really have the potential to be very annoying, though they can make the fight drag on a little bit longer than I would like because they have succulent berries. It isn't enough to out-heal, however, how much damage you can do with Chompy, so it doesn't really make the fight last longer than it really has any right to. It's just that you made the guard for longer than you otherwise would have to if they didn't want to heal themselves. The fight is otherwise still very much in your favor as long as you can super block consistently, and you should be able to win with very little trouble. But then, we have one of the worst fights we've had to deal with this entire challenge. The second encounter with Zasp and Mothiva. This fight was pain. Where do I even start with this one? Well, actually, I know exactly where to start with this. Let's talk about Zasp, because while he is a really freaking annoying character to fight against, he's not the worst freaking part of it. We gotta save the worst for last, because I'm just that pessimistic. But yeah, Zasp. Now, here's the funny thing. We can't target Mothiva until Zasp gets knocked out, so his damage potential is already a lot lower than it otherwise should be. However, that does not change the fact that he functions as a very strong meat shield for Mothiva. He only has single target attacks, which still works very well with taunt, but he can taunt us, which means that we can't taunt for a while, and that means that other bugs are at risk whenever he chooses to attack us. He also has a defense point, which only becomes so much worse when you consider the fact that Mothiva can revive him whenever he gets knocked out. And of course, there's no way to guarantee what move he does use. If he wants to attack you indirectly, he can do that. And if he does do that, well, then Spiky Botter's not going to really help you here, unfortunately. So you could try to use Break on him to lower his defense and make him go down faster, but there's also the case of Mothiva, and Mothiva makes this excruciating. Now, this is what really burns from her. She doesn't attack you directly, aside from her shin kick, which you would probably not want to try super blocking anyway, because if you did and you missed it entirely, that's a lot of freaking damage. She also has an area of effect attack that hits literally everybody except for, of course, Princess. And you just might find yourself unable to keep up with how much damage they're doing at you as well. Which is also why I could also advise using Infivo, a medal you get from defeating the Watcher on hard mode, just because it makes Mothiva that much less overwhelming. But the worst part is that if Mothiva wanted to, she can make this fight unwinnable. Because she can immediately revive Zasp as soon as he goes down, and you have to beat Zasp before you can attack Mothiva directly. And he will be guaranteed to get at least 2 hits on you before he goes down again, if not more. My first attempt saw me lose this fight. And I don't mean I just lost, I mean I was just a hair away from winning. But I missed one final block, and I lost the last of my HP. I only had 2 left. My Miracle Matter was just started because Leif just got knocked out that turn 2. And I was one turn away from winning, and I lost. I had tried to fight him. I tried to fight them again, and I again lost because I could not get any kind of momentum. Because Mothiva kept reviving Zasp, and I was just not able to do anything to her at all. And I got exhausted. I couldn't keep going, and I just felt so freaking bitter from this. So I left, restocked on a bunch of items, and then I won a ridiculously convincing fashion where I'm surprised that this fight was not even close like it was in the previous attempts. But you know what? I'm not gonna complain because I just wanted to have this fight be over with. This was freaking insanity. And fortunately, the rest of the challenge isn't even that bad. At least whatever is left for us to actually do. As for any remaining bosses, we first off have Riz. He isn't special for any reason, but I consider him my personal demon in this game because I always struggle to fight him. Being inked and being unable to use any team skills just sucks the life out of me. Now, I should make a disclaimer and say this, but ever since we beat Mothiva, we have access to 2 HP core medals as well as life casts. Using all 3 of these medals, if we wanted to, we could equip all those medals to Leif, have him just spam Bubble Shield Life on himself, and then just win through attrition and nothing else. Because if Riz can't touch us at all, and Chompy is still able to do damage, then there is basically no fight that we just cannot win. But I'm not allowing myself to do that because, let's be honest, if I did do that, then there would be absolutely no reason for you to watch this video. You clicked for a challenge, and I'm giving that to you. That being said, the same reason I always struggle with Riz applies here too. I keep getting tripped up by his attack timing, and it doesn't help that also means that I may not be able to taunt, and I forgot to give Tardigrade Shield to Kabbu. In this fight, being able to block status actually means something, because not being able to taunt or, Tardigrade Shield myself and use 30 actually is a problem. That aside though, this fight was not that difficult to do, at least when I actually got to finish it, and I did not have to do it a second time. You might be wondering, what? Well, let me tell you, I afterwards went to Rubber Prison and completely forgot to save since I found this freaking village. And while I was making my way through, I ended up getting a game over in Rubber Prison. Twice! And guess what still? I forgot to save the first time, so I had to fight Riz again, and then I made sure to save after that, so I wouldn't have to do it again. As far as the ULTIMAX Tank goes, however, well, this actually was a deceptively easy boss fight to do. Somehow even easier than when he was outside the freaking tank. A lot of his attacks only can hit a single target, so having Kabbu in the back and just using his taunt works really well here. He can sometimes try to charge us down, but it really does not amount to very much because it's not very strong, and we can have V heal the other bugs if we really needed to. But the cream of the cake comes from when ULTIMAX summons a Wasp Scout. Now here's the thing, ULTIMAX can summon a Wasp to help aid him in battle, but if he chose to summon either a Driller or a Trooper or a Bomber, I'm not sure if he can summon all of those, but he did summon a Scout, we would have to beat them first before Chompy could continue to do damage to the main tank. And that would be really bad, but he summoned a Scout, an airborne enemy, and it happens to have a move that can poison Kabbu. And remember what I was talking about earlier as far as regarding not wanting to use Eternal Venom, Reverse Toxin, Poison Defender, etc, etc? Yeah, he can poison me, I'm taking advantage of that, and Kabbu is basically invincible. There is nothing he can do anymore, and this fight is basically over. It seems anticlimactic, but let's be real here, it's his dang fault for summoning an enemy that I cannot touch at all, which actually ends up being a good thing for me, because after the tank is destroyed, the Wasp Scout is blown away too, and the rest of the fight is already over. Because what is ULTIMAX going to do against a Kabbu that is souped up on poison and is basically impossible to kill now? Not much, I'll say that. But hey, that was cool of you, ULTIMAX, so why don't you just chill out? And this brings us to Chapter 7, The Everlasting Sapling. And this is where our journey comes to an end, in more ways than one. There is one enemy of note that I really have to bring your attention to, and that's the Deadlander Beta. This is an enemy that is always airborne. You cannot knock it down no matter what you try, so not even freezing it would work. Princess is completely and utterly stuck by this thing, and there is nothing she can do about it. I bring this up because there is a required battle with the Deadlanders, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, and you have to fight it to continue going on in the game, and there's no way around this either. On the upside, we do have the status mirror medal here, which basically acts like synchronized in Pokemon, whereas if you get status, the enemy that statuses you gets that same status back at them as well. And it is possible for the Deadlander Beta to poison you if it attacks with its Poison Gunk Shot, but that isn't really going to help because, as we already know, passive damage cannot fell a fighter. So it really looks like we have finally met our end. But we have Maki, who is helping us fight when we get ambushed. And it's thanks to Maki that we even get to go any further in this challenge, because there's no way around this fight, and he can in fact reach the Dead Lander beta. So he takes care of the absolute biggest obstacle in our way, and we're able to keep moving forward. So if you felt that Maki was just obtrusive back in the far grasslands, well, here he's basically our Lord and Savior, because without him, we'd be literally stuck. And I would talk about the rest of the Deadlanders, but I literally just had Kabbu get poisoned by the beta, and he was basically invincible because of reverse toxin and poison defenders and eternal venom, so it really is not worth talking about any more than that. There's also the fire constructs that we find in the Deadlands after, we beat the roaches in its village, and they're not really worth talking about either. I kind of just had Kabbu do his thing with tons, had Bubble Shoot Life protect him, and I had Chompy just do her thing as well. Maybe I had Leif also do his break skill to lower defense, because we had to worry about that, even though Maki mainly took care of everything else, because there is another airborne enemy here. And yeah, Maki he saves us hardcore, man. It's like, it's only thanks to him we're even able to get this far. It's just a shame we could not have his help just for a little bit longer. Ladies and gentlemen, we finally made it to the Wasp King, the firebending foe wasp that really gives Chompy a run for her money. The first phase is honestly simple enough. We have Sidus Mirror equipped to Kabbu, and he does get burned a lot by the attacks that the Wasp King attacks with. And that helps chip down the Wasp King a lot faster, because the damage he takes is 3 from being burned, and that just helps us a lot in dealing more damage more quickly. We also just spam Enfeeble with Leif, have Chompy keep attacking with her bite, and slowly but surely we chip the king down and he falls to his knees. For a while. He tries to throw a cherry bomb at us, but our explosive retardant baby Chomper isn't really concerned with that. And yet still, she was helpless to do anything but watch, as the Wasp King unlocks the Everlasting Sapling, swallows it whole, and becomes the Everlasting King. And this is how the challenge ends. Having to fight a boss with roughly over 150 HP across all 3 of his phases combined, can attack thrice in a single turn with all of its weapons next to him, and is airborne, so Chompy can't even reach him. The only way we'll be able to do any damage in this boss fight is if he burns Kabbu and Sidus Mirror gets triggered. But even if we did that, he would keep healing himself. And even when he runs out of heals, he'll always have at least 1 HP left, because a boss cannot physically get knocked out by passive damage. I wasn't able to get that far in this boss fight when I was streaming this attempt on my Twitch channel, but all the same, we succumb to the Everlasting King, a boss fight that is physically impossible for Chompy to be able to beat. Can you beat Bug Fables the Everlasting Sapling with only Chompy for every battle? No. But I must say, the fact that she was even able to get to the Everlasting King at all is incredible in its own right. Considering everything she's been through, I think that just the fact that she was able to get all the way to the Wasp King and beat that is already nothing short of incredible. We just could not close it out though.
I'm sorry, Princess. I really wanted you to become a queen, but I guess that dream will just always be out of your grip.
That being said, you can at least be the best bounty hunter to ever live. And there is still a lot of bosses to show in this game that we haven't even attempted yet. So in part 2 of this challenge, we'll be going over all the other bosses that we could try to beat and just see how many of them can be beaten. There are some surprises to be had, that's for absolute certain, so make sure you watch the video when it comes out. Until then, I want you, yes, you the viewer, I want you to leave a comment down below under this video and tell me your favorite bug of Team Snakemouth, V, Kabbu, Leif, or Chompy. It's good for the YouTube algorithm. And with that, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.